Hi, I'm U.S. Attorney Janine Ferris-Pirro. Government shutdown or not, crime doesn't stop, and neither do the prosecutors in this office. Here's a look at the cases keeping our prosecutors in the fight. Sentences of note. 31-year-old Matthew Green was sentenced to 100 months in prison for his role in drug trafficking conspiracy and for illegally possessing a Glock 19 pistol. Officers recovered crack cocaine, 122 vials of PCP, 366 grams of marijuana, and a 20-ounce bottle of suspected lean, a cocktail of prescription-strength cough syrup mixed with soda. 6 defendants were sentenced for their involvement in a shooting that killed 3 over Labor Day weekend in 2021. The 3 ringleaders were each sentenced to more than 100 years incarceration. 3 victims, Ms. Donetta Dyson, 31, Mr. Keenan Braxton, 24, and Mr. Johnny Joyner, 37, were killed, and another 3 victims sustained non-lethal gunshot wounds from that shooting. And a former Colombian Army intelligence officer, 36-year-old Waro Andres Alzate Milan, was sentenced to 65 months in prison for a scheme to export nearly 10 kilograms of cocaine from South America to the United States. Milan provided 10 bricks of cocaine to an individual with the intention of trafficking the coke from Colombia to New York. 40-year-old Charles Hilton was sentenced to 25 years in federal prison for producing child pornography and sexually abusing a 13-year-old girl. Investigators recovered more than 1,000 explicit files linked to his online account, including homemade videos of the abuse. Investigators recovered text messages from Hilton's devices. Those texts indicated that Hilton blackmailed the 13-year-old victim by threatening to share embarrassing information about her. And if you think crime stops when an offender is sent to jail, think again. 42-year-old Franklin Giovanni Torres, a convicted sex offender, already serving 21 years in federal prison for producing and distributing child pornography and first-degree sexual abuse of a minor, was sentenced to an additional 16 months for mailing death threats to the mother of the victim in the previous crime. The handwritten letter to his victim's mom said, quote, "I'm going to get out one day, and when that day comes is when you're going to shed tears of blood, because that day I'm going to get rid of your whole family, cousins, nephews, nieces, and grandmother, children, even the dog at your home I'll get rid of." And when he completes his prison sentences in South Carolina, Torres will be deported to El Salvador. A heavily armed fentanyl dealer, 31-year-old Angelo Mark, was sentenced to 91 months in prison for operating a drug delivery service with his brother across the D.C. metro area. Kind of like DoorDash, but you get drugs instead. When law enforcement executed a search warrant, they recovered multiple firearms, 3 assault-style rifles with serial numbers removed, and nearly 1,000 rounds of ammunition. And as for charges and arrests, 18-year-old Naquan Lucas was charged in a 16-count indictment with the June 30 murder of 21-year-old congressional intern Eric Tarpinian Jackham. Lucas was then also charged in a second indictment for the July 4th murder of 17-year-old Zoe Kelly. Tarpinian was an innocent bystander when 3 armed suspects began firing shots near the convention center. Tarpinian was shot 4 times and died the next day. The gunfire traveled as far as 5 blocks away, and 5 additional victims were identified. Less than a week later, on the 4th of July, MPD officers found Zoe Kelly dead of a gunshot wound to the head inside a bedroom closet. Earlier, on September 5th, Naquan's 17-year-old brother, Jalen Lucas, and 17-year-old Kelvin Thomas Jr. were arrested and charged as adults on counts of first-degree murder while armed in the intern's killing. I believe these were predictable homicides based upon the behavior of these individuals and the records that everyone knew about. Yet the D.C. Council is interested in protecting not the victims, but the criminals under the guise of protecting the innocence of youth. In another case, a 41-year-old Louis Jerry was arrested outside the Cathedral of St. Matthew the Apostle after officers discovered more than 200 homemade explosive devices. The cathedral was preparing to hold the Red Mass for the Supreme Court justices. Jerry threatened to ignite the explosives. In his manifesto, he expressed his hatred for Catholics, Jews, the Supreme Court, and ICE. 33-year-old Yana Leonova, a citizen of Belarus, was extradited from France on an indictment charging her in connection with procuring and illicitly exporting numerous avionics and other prohibited aircraft equipment from the United States to Russia. Following Russia's invasion of Ukraine in May 2022, Leonova, with co-conspirators located in the U.S., purchased the aircraft components from U.S.-based distributors. Then, using companies located in Armenia, the Maldives, and elsewhere, they transshipped the components to Russia without the required licenses from the U.S. Department of Commerce and pleas and convictions. 3 members of a violent crew were found guilty in connection with the armed robberies of 12 pharmacies and cell phone stores in the District, Maryland, Virginia, and New Jersey. 32-year-old Ashley Gowes, 35-year-old Demel Mitchell, and 35-year-old Terrence Barnum, multiple co-defendants, though previously had pleaded guilty to their roles in a number of these robberies. And a jury found 36-year-old Ronell Offit guilty on 4 counts of assault with intent to kill while armed. Offit had a fight with others during a traffic dispute. The dispute led him to being beaten. He then left the scene and returned with a gun and shot at a crowded bus stop. He hit a 5-year-old girl and 3 adults. Miraculously, no one died. Peter Williams pleaded guilty to 2 counts of theft of trade secrets, stealing cyber exploit components from his employer, an American defense contractor. The components were meant to be sold exclusively to the U.S. government and select allies. Williams, who was the general manager for the defense contractor, sold those secrets to a Russian cyber broker in exchange for the promise of millions in cryptocurrency. His conduct caused over $35 million in losses to a company here in the District of Columbia. And in other news, my office, in conjunction with the U.S. Marshal Service, had launched a citywide operation to ensure that sex offenders who live in the district remain compliant with the law. Federal agents have conducted compliance checks on 883 sex offenders and identified, arrested, and prosecuted 25 sex offenders for failing to register. This effort is an essential part of ensuring public safety in D.C. 9 of those offenders previously were convicted of either extremely serious sexual assaults or having victimized multiple individuals. And lastly, efforts by the Violent Crimes and Narcotics Trafficking section in my office led to the takedown of a dangerous drug den, which was directly across the street from a school with kindergarten students. Recovered items included cocaine, fentanyl, body armor, multiple handguns, 4 Draco-style assault pistols, and over 300 rounds of ammo. And every day we confront the pain and the trauma inflicted on victims by criminals. And even when the government is shut down, our responsibility is to stand up for you. My office will stop at nothing to expose wrongdoers, prove their crimes in court, and deliver justice to the people of the district.